Good evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting for Thursday, January 15th, 2026, beginning at 6 p.m. I will call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. The next thing on our agenda is to adjourn to executive session with a roll call vote to adjourn to executive session pursuant to MGLC 30A Section 21A2 to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Regular open meeting session will resume at approximately 6:30. Ms. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Ebert-Long?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Duvall?
Aye.
And I am an aye, and we will adjourn to executive session. Hello, we have returned from executive session, and we will continue with our agenda this evening. Next on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes for December 11th, 17th, and 22nd. We can do them separately. So we'll start with December 11th. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the December 11th meeting minutes as presented in the packet.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? December 17th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the December 17th meeting minutes as presented in the packet.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And December 22nd.
I'll make a motion that we accept the December 22nd meeting minutes as presented in the packet.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, moving right along, we have our MRHS student representative, Maggie Powers. Welcome.
How are you guys? It's been a while.
Good, how are you?
Good.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I hope everybody had a good holiday season. I want to start off by talking about the Outsiders play in November, kind of where we left off. I didn't think I was going to be able to see it, but I did end up seeing it with my family and stuff, so it was incredible. Not actually, it normally is. And yeah, I hope if any of you guys got to go that you thought the same. Definitely super excited for the Addams Family in the spring, because the Outsiders, the fall play is usually a good indicator of what's to come, and this one was very good, so excited for that. And then a lot of chorus and band stuff happening. They had a winter concert and an alumni concert, and obviously the middle school has a concert tonight. I did not get to go to the winter concert, but I did go to the alumni concert, which was a lot of fun. Again, I love the music department and theater department we have here, so that's definitely, I think, a big highlight, and I always love to talk about it. And then on November 16th, Mr. Dixon's AP Gov classes went on a field trip to DC. I was on this trip, and my dad was a chaperone, so that was a lot of fun. I love how Mr. Dixon always kind of tries to take us to DC, or takes his AP Gov classes to DC, just to see what's going on while we're taking AP Gov. So the first day we went to the Air and Space Museum, and then the National Museum of African American History, before we walked around to see the monuments. And then the next day we went to walk around a couple other museums in the area before we went to the IMF, which is like, I guess, a big kind of monetary foundation that helps countries with their finances. And we got a lecture on the history and the function of the IMF, which was super interesting. And then we also got to speak with the director of their worldwide operations, and she was incredible. So it was a lot of fun, and really, really cool to see how that works, because I really didn't have any idea what the IMF was beforehand. And then the end of that night, we went to a Washington Capitals game, and then the last day we visited the Supreme Court and had a meeting with Senator Markey, and we got a tour of the Capitol building and actually got to see the House of Representatives in session for a pretty high-profile hearing, which was a lot of fun, super interesting, and saw a couple famous politicians while we were there. So very cool, and I'm very happy I went, and very happy that my dad got to go. And a lot of fun, all these little trips that the school does, international and in the United States. And then, obviously, fall sports has ended, and now we are kind of in the middle of winter sports, and it looks like all the teams are doing a really good job so far. So that's going to be super exciting to see how the rest of their seasons go, and then getting into spring sports, how that's going to go for the rest of the year. And then we also had a few more field trips in the past few weeks at the high school, with some science classes going to Woods Hole and doing all the oceanographic stuff that they have down there. And then some Mandarin classes going to Boston and Chinatown. And then another quick little musical department shout out is that they recently attended the Southeast Music Festival. So congratulations to them. You know, they always do pretty well there, and I think they send more kids from there to like different, more competitive festivals. So very exciting. Then next week, the high school has midterms, so everybody's just getting ready for that. Half days on most of the days except Tuesday, but I think, yeah, it's kind of pretty crazy how fast the year has gone by, at least for me. I feel like it's crazy that midterms are already here. But that is all for me tonight. Excellent. Hopefully soon I'll have some updates on sports and other clubs and stuff, so.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions for Maggie? All right. Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Moving right along to public comment.
Evening, Charles Kruska, 6 T-Berry Ave, Harwich. I viewed Monday's Harwich Select Board meeting, at which the acting town administrator presented the first draft of the FY27 Harwich town budget. That draft included a Monomoy District FY27 assessment of about $32.6 million, representing a 4.7% increase over the current FY26. In reviewing the FY27 Monomoy draft budget presentation in the agenda packet for this evening's school committee meeting, I note that it has the proposed Harwich assessment at just under $33.8 million, an increase of 8.47% over the current FY26. That figure is almost $1.2 million higher than the one included in the draft of the Harwich town budget. These numbers imply that the school committee would have to reduce its budget by over $1.5 million to come to an assessment matching what's being carried in the Harwich town budget draft, including the proportional reduction in the Chatham assessment that would be driven by the existing funding formula in the regional agreement. That would be nearly 4 times the amount of the budget reduction that the school committee voted at the 11th hour last spring before finalizing the FY26 budget. It appears to me that over the next few weeks, the school committee is going to be facing its greatest challenge in several years as far as its impact on the education of the district's students is concerned. Picking up where I left off the last time I spoke during public comment, I urged the committee to learn from last year's experience. I believe that the school committee would not have had to reduce its budget or could have kept in enough funding to purchase a number of one-offs like furnishings, equipment, and training within a Harwich assessment that would not have required a Proposition 2.5 override. I hope that this time around the school committee will want to be better and more fully informed in a timely manner regarding the details of the Harwich town budget situation and clearly understand the implications for the necessity of an override before making any reductions of items it deems necessary to maintain the quality of the educational experience of its students. On Monday, the Harwich Select Board also finalized a letter to the Chatham Select Board regarding its concerns about the sustainability of the funding formula of the regional agreement. The letter will be accompanied by an in-depth data report that it previously received and reviewed that, in my opinion, is very eye-opening. Some of the key data was highlighted in the front page article of last week's Chronicle. The full packet can be found in the agenda packet for the January 12, 2026 Harwich Select Board meeting. Since any changes in the towns may wish to make to the funding formula will first need to receive approval from the school committee, I would suggest that it would behoove each member of the committee to obtain and thoroughly familiarize themselves with those documents. Perhaps the chair might want to obtain and distribute copies to the committee for their review. I ask myself, is it fair that Harwich households, including the majority without any children being directly served by the schools, pays twice the annual property tax tuition for the schools as those in Chatham, when the students of both towns receive the same exact educational program from the same educators in the same buildings with the same class sizes and with the same administrators starting in grade 5? This situation is putting a strain on Harwich, which is a direct contributor to the fiscal realities that the school committee will be facing in upcoming weeks. I fear that the situation that was first predicted several years ago is now upon us. Through it all, I urge all parties to keep the educational well-being of the students of the Monomoy Regional District as the top priority driving all the fiscal decisions. And as always, thank you for your respectful attention and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. All right, moving right along to reports and discussion. First up, we have a MRHS donation to Red Rover from the Animal Welfare and Young Women's Club.
Good evening, School Committee. Mike McMillan, School Business Manager. There's two donations here from student activity accounts at the high school. There's memos for both of them with a little further information on the source and the fundraising activities. The first is $1,600 from the Monomoy Regional High School Animal Welfare Club and Young Women's Club account to the Red Rover Purple Leash Project.
Do I have a motion? Trustee Brett-Long?
Motion to approve the donation of $1,600 from the Monomoy Regional High School Animal Welfare Club and Young Women's Club account to the Red Rover Purple Leash Project.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right. Do I have a motion for the second donation?
Motion to approve the donation of $776.99 from the Monomoy Regional High School Diversity Club to Direct Relief.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had Roberta put in a copy of our subcommittees. For right now, we are only a committee of 7 members. So for any subcommittee meeting that we have between now and the time we fill that seat, the 8th seat, we just have to make sure that there's no more than 3 members that attend the subcommittee meetings. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So for any meetings that have 4, 1 person would have to step down for. But, so moving along to the next thing in your packet is the announcement for applications so that we can fill our 8th seat. They are, anybody interested is applying now for the Harwich seat, and Ryan and I and the Select Board will be meeting on February 2nd to interview any candidates and hopefully appoint someone to fill that role until town elections. Any questions?
Is that an open meeting? A public meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. It's at one of their Select Board meetings.
Okay.
So it'll be at the Griffin Room?
The one
Griffin?
upstairs?
Yes, the upstairs meeting room.
And will you guys have an opportunity to interview the candidates as well? And
We are interviewing the candidates with the Select Board.
so you will have an opportunity to ask questions and,
That is my understanding.
And then is it a majority of the vote between the select board and the school committee?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Yes,
Yes? Because you've been through this.
yes.
I don't remember voting.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a vote by both the school committee and the selectmen,
majority.
and the majority wins.
Thanks. Okay, that's good, that's better than I thought.
8 votes altogether.
Yes. Yes, on February
Fantastic.
2nd. So this is only the subcommittee issue is only a short-lived issue, hopefully. All right, moving right along to the first reading policy files.
Sure. Up first, we have file BDA, School Committee Organization. The only thing I ask is, under the actual language of it, that we just strike that section 1 language from it. That was meant to be referenced under the legal references, so that's just a typo.
Okay. Any questions?
On to the next. Next up, we have filed BDB, School Committee Officers. We're also not recommending any changes to this one. Any questions on this one? And then, Madam Chair, I will make or are we on to the next?
Yep.
Next one, okay. I will make a motion that we accept file CBD, Superintendent's Contract, file CE, Administrative Councils, Cabinets, and Committees, file CF, School Building Administration, file CH/CHA//CHC, Policy Implementation and Development of Procedures, file BGD, School Committee Review of Procedures, and file CHD, Administration and Policy Absence, as presented in the packet.
Second? Patty? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right. Excellent.
Cha-cha-cha.
The highlight of the night.
Whoa.
All right. Yes. Joy's going to help out with the moving along of the slides. So she'll speed up if I'm going too slow.
Excellent.
So, where we are in the budget process. So we are, this is the first opportunity for you to vote on a draft of the budget. And this is to allow us to share a draft budget with the towns and to publicize this in advance of our public hearing. But this is just a draft of the budget, and there are some key things going to happen over the next few weeks which will impact these numbers. So, and I'm going to, I'm like a broken record, but health insurance and state funding. Health insurance will affect the budget, state funding, and the minimum local contribution figures will affect the assessments. So things will definitely change over the next couple of months. We've made an estimate for some of these figures, which we'll mention as we go through, but we don't know what those are yet. And when we get those numbers, it will change everything. So hopefully, in some places for the better, we have made relatively conservative estimates of some figures. And hopefully when we get the actuals, they'll be not as expensive as we thought, and that'll help us out, but we'll see. But this budget, so the budget we've developed, despite the numbers which, we've already talked about some of these numbers, it is essentially a level service budget. We are essentially just trying to do the same that we're doing next year as we're doing this year, the same level of service for our students as we are delivering. So there's no big changes in here. There are, in fact, some reduced staffing planned. So, and those driven by enrollment, which is why we're still level service, because of a fewer number of students, same level of service, we're able to do that with fewer staff. So it's a level service, reduced staffing budget. Despite that, that's the preamble for where we're at right now. So we had a December draft, which is up there. There's been a change since then. Our budget increase is now at 7.04%. It's a big number. So, and I'm going to talk about, and we've talked already about some of the factors that are driving that. I'll rehash them again this evening. Nothing, I have a few things that we've added since then, but that, it's changed it like a little, around 0.7%. It was already a big number. It's still a big number. And that translates, let me go to the next slide, that translates into assessment increases of just shy of 8.5% for Harwich and 7.5% for Chatham. So again, both big percentage increases, much bigger than our towns. Even town of Chatham, this was larger than they were expecting. So this is a big percentage increase, and we recognise that. And the fiscal wherewithal of our towns to fund this, and the fiscal well-being of our towns is high in the forefront of our minds as well. So we do recognise and realise what a big ask this is at where we're at right now. One of the key numbers which determine not the total assessment but the split between the two towns is that local minimum contribution number at the top. That's set by the state, and we'll get that on the 28th, so the last Wednesday of the month. That's when we'll get those figures, and that will determine that split. So those percentages could go either way, as that really impacts how much each town pays, what their share of the total assessment is. There is, almost 1% of each of their assessment increase, and 1% of the budget is the first initial payment on the middle school project. So that's the siding and windows project. So that is going to be you know, it's around $500,000, a little shy of $500,000 is our first payment on the debt for that project. And actually, it's just short. We'll have short-term debt that will end during 27, and we'll have our first payment, and then we'll have our long-term debt. The first payment of that will be FY28. So this is just the start of that road, but it is going to, you know, it's impacting our budget, and it was approved at the town meetings last year. All right, so that's it. So I could stop there, but this is my moment in the sun, in the light, so I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to go over a little bit what we talked about in December. I'm going to show you why it's changed and provide some more of the context and history of these figures. So property insurance that we had predicted a 15% increase, we actually reduced it after doing a little bit more research, advised by our finance subcommittee, and we've reduced that down to 10%, and so that took a little off our budget. Everything else is close to where it was. Our budget requests, which I'm going to review, that, and that's a sort of that's not just recurring items, or they're new items that we've added. Staffing, that's just contractual salary, and cost of living increases, steps and lanes that our staff get. Health insurance. So that's obviously the big ticket item this year. This is the one that's keeping me awake at night. We have assumed a 15% increase in our health insurance costs. We'll know that. We will actually get a bit of a hint of where it's going in the last week in January, but we'll get a vote of the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group on early February, and that's when we'll know exactly what that increase is going to be. I should say that there are two numbers in there actually. So health insurance, we have health insurance for our active members and for our retirees. So the active members, their rate increases in July 1, and we're assuming that's that 15% increase. So retirees are actually calendar year, which always makes it a little bit difficult. And their increase was already high this year. It was around a 9 to 14% in that ballpark, because of different rates for different programs. So they've already had a big increase, and I've included an additional increase of 15%. So for some programs, you know, you're over 20% increase in the from the FY26 budget to FY27 for retiree programs. And for us, retiree programs are an increasingly large size because we're a relatively young district, so we're still contributing to our retiree pool, so that's getting bigger every year. So that number is getting bigger, and the rates are getting bigger. So that's why the actual increase is more than 15%, because it's both. It's the active, which is 15%, and the retirees, which is actually more than 15%. So we will find out those exact rates, and we'll hopefully be bringing them down, but there's a lot more conversations to happen in the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group before that's settled. Utilities continue to go up. Electricity is up, as is gas, and we do have some construction projects, and I'll mention them again as we go through. But as we said, we do have some staffing reductions in here. We have a total reductions of 8.3 FTEs. We are making some strategic, some of those are changes, so we're making strategic decisions to better meet our students' needs and that's where the principal's requests, which have an increase of 4.5, and so they offset, so we end up at total FTE reduction of 3.8. So we haven't announced those positions yet, so we've identified those positions internally, but obviously until we know for sure where we are with the budget, we haven't publicized that, because when we inform our staff of what's happening with their positions, we want to be clear and certain so that people have the information they need to make the decisions they have to make. We've also, there are the eventual positions will also somewhat depend on if we have retirements. That can help us make a decision about exactly which position to reduce, but just rest assured, these aren't just we're going to cut 4 positions. We know exactly which programs would be involved and how we do it. And as I say, it's driven by enrollment reductions. And really, we're seeing a reduction of about 50 students, I think, from 26 to 27 is what we're expecting. But if you look at the sort of 3-year reduction, and that's really what is taking effect now. We've had reduction of over, I think it's like 150 almost reduction in students over the last few years, and a lot of them are are concentrated in certain grades, and that's where we're able to make some reductions of staffing. And if you go to the next slide, and then this is those sort of enhancement requests. I know these are exactly the same as we presented in December, so I won't necessarily rehash them all, but just to refresh your memory, it does include adding some positions. Some of these, if they are the plan and as is reflected in the budget, they're offset by a grant that we've applied for. If we don't get the grant, we don't add the positions, so the position. So just so you're aware that if we don't, there's a net zero impact of those on the budget because they're either covered by a grant or they don't happen. But all the other positions are reflected in the budget.
And Michael, these are in our budget currently?
These are all in the budget as we speak.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so there are a number of capital and maintenance projects which we would like to be able to progress with this year. Some of them are more critical than others. Some of them have safety issues related to them, and so these are the ones that have been included. And again, these are all included in the budget at the moment and were prioritized as part of our capital and maintenance plan process. This is just, so that reduction, that 51 reduction in enrollment, and really, when 50 doesn't necessarily translate to 7 position or, 3.5 positions, but it's really the cumulative reduction over a number of years, which kind of gets us to where we are. So this is new information. So these are changes that we made since December. So one was a reduction actually we reduced the property insurance costs by 10%. Our Barnstable County retirement costs, I think I had estimated that would go up 10% and they're actually going up, I had estimated 12 and they're actually closer to 14% increase. And that's partly just because we get the number from Barnstable County retirement, so I estimated that it might be similar to last year and actually it was higher. So and that comes back to that problem as well. So when we were day one of Monomoy, we had 0 retirees. So the towns kept their retirees. And we are only paying for retirement costs of people who have retired from Monomoy. So we've only had 10 years of retiring. So we are sort of continue to add to those and so that pool's growing as Monomoy gets older. And so we'll see so the whole Barnstable County retirement program is going up around 7%, but ours is higher because our pool is growing year to year as well. Transportation costs. So as I looked at transportation costs over, Christmas, the December, after the December draft, we've just seen an increase, and this is largely out of district transportation, one way or another. So for a variety of reasons, we're providing transportation to and from the district for students who live or attend school outside of the district for a variety of reasons. A lot of special education, but it can also be like homeless or other reasons for people needing additional transportation services. And those costs are very expensive to provide. We need it every day. It needs to be guaranteed. There aren't a lot of providers on the Cape, and so the costs are very expensive. And so seeing the year-to-year increase in costs that, right now, what I'm seeing, that I want to make sure we're not going to be in deficit next year. So we increase the budget to reflect that. A lot of these things, and it's a bit like when you do the special education out of district tuition, you have a good idea what it's going to look like next year. You don't know for sure because a lot of, if these students are still going to be in the placements, but you've got to kind of make their best guess based on what you know right now to avoid problems next year. So the extended school year salaries, so this was just my mistake. So I had not included them in the budget in December, and this is staff who provide, we run school programs during the summer, and those are positions for those salaries, so they were not there in the previous draft, but they are in now, so apologies for that. And then a whole bunch of different other changes. I just went through line by line to see where we were maybe a little high based on our historic expenditure or a little low, and made a whole bunch of adjustments, made sure we had all our, possible, stipends and clubs were all included, made sure that we reflected historic expenditure, and, made a bunch of changes, and the net effect of all those changes to make sure we would have enough money for all those lines next year was $75,000. And so that's how you get to that increase of $332,000. And so that's where we get to the January draft of the budget. So the next couple of slides, I just wanted to make sure you have this information. This is our budget and expenditure for the last 5 years and including 2027, obviously just the budget for 2026. So you can, and it's by kind of categories that are highlighted in our budget policy. So that's not super helpful to read at your leisure. If you have any questions about those numbers, let me know. The next slide shows it in chart form, which is a little easier to interpret. I've got them, I put them, you've got all the categories on the left because they're sort of in a similar-ish scale, so you can kind of make sense of them on one chart. The instruction category is obviously by far the largest category, and that's getting up to 30 million. If you put them all on the same graph, everything except for instruction is really too small to even see. So that's why I separated them out into two charts just for this presentation. When I was looking at that, okay, oh, whoa, I'm going as fast as I can. So when and I was looking at this, so, where's the smoking gun, right? What is causing the problems? And most of the increases are, at this scale, they're all relatively similar in scale, except our benefits and fixed charges, and that's our insurance, and our health insurance and retiree costs. And that's, such a significant impact this year on top of years of increases, and it's really driving a significant portion of why our increase is so high this year. Other things worth highlighting are programs with other school districts that are actually down this year, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is our charter tuition has gone down again, which is great. That's the number of students we pay for attending charter schools outside the district. School choice has stayed relatively low, which is also great, so that's good. It's staying where we thought it would. And we actually have, so our out-of-district tuition, although that continues to be a high number that we are budgeting for, we're getting more money from the state because we had such a high number last year. Our circuit breaker funding was higher this year. So that's actually, those three factors have helped get that number down this year on year, which is great. And, instruction is the biggest part of our budget, and you can see that's kind of similar to previous years' increases. All right. And then, so these are just, and again, this is just kind of giving you this data so that you have it and you can review our staff district enrollment and our staffing FTE, so you can see that we've got the reduction plan for FY27. I should say the staffing FTE, staffing's always a little difficult because staffing changes. For example, if you have vacancies at a period in time, that gives you a different number. It depends, and the most reliable number we have is the number we get that's reported every October 1st to the state, but that's moment in time, and it doesn't include all of our staff. So there's always it's always hard to get the exact number going back a comparable number going back multiple years. But essentially what I do is I take that number that we report on October 1st, and then I know what staff are not reported and add them in. But it can be like plus and minus even 4 or 5 positions, that number, because if we have vacancies on that day, especially at the start of the year. So just bear that in mind. But what it gives you is a sense of what our, the trend in our numbers. And, we've, from 21 to 24, we saw increases as we were coming through COVID, and ESSER funding provided additional staff. And we started to see a reduction over the last few years as we've come down. And then those numbers that we're planning for FY27. If you go back, so I've also included the foundation enrollment, so that's the number of students that live in the towns and attend public school, even if it's not Monomoy schools, and that's where we're seeing, both towns are, the numbers going down, and you can see the number we're forecasting for FY27, but we'll find out on the 28th. The number the state will use for the budget we'll find out on the 28th, but it should be around that FY26 number of 1197. So that would be a drop for both towns and of similar proportions. And then we've got the interesting thing about the next slide is, so this is expenditure from all funds, but budget from the general fund. So you can see the portion of our expenditure that the general fund makes up. And so you can see, like when we're back in 22 and 23, we had large, 4 or 5 million differences. And then it's kind of stayed around that for the last few years. And that's just, we're drawing on, and that just gives you a sense we're using school choice funds, we're using IDA funds from the federal government to help offset the cost for the budget. And then the assessments, which we've already talked about. And actually, if you go to the next slide, so this chart is the assessments since FY20, and using the first, if you look at FY20, where you have the blue bar and the orange bar, that's the Harwich is blue, and orange is the Chatham assessment. And you can see them sort of progressing. Chatham's even actually went down 1 year, and then when you get to FY23, there's now a different set of bars, which is the new assessment methodology. So the kind of reddish bar is Harwich, and the grey bar is Chatham. So you can see in 23, the Harwich assessment was lower than it would have been had we stuck with the new assessment methodology. And that distinction has continued since then. So each year, had we stuck with the old assessment methodology, Harwich would have been paying a larger portion of the assessment than they are under the new assessment methodology. And so that's just a little reminder that could be worse. We made a change to the assessment methodology, and that has benefited Harwich to the tune of almost $1.5 million this year. And if you think of the cumulative impact, every year Harwich has had that saving, and that's been a boon to that town. I mean, so it's still hard because, municipalities and school districts, we tend to think about percentage increases, so year to year, but Harwich is from a lower base than they might have otherwise been had we not changed the assessment methodology. So just to reiterate, so we are this draft budget, and these assessments are based on some key assumptions, some of which will remain assumptions, and some of which we will have updated information. So health insurance, property insurance will not change because we don't get the actual rate until June. Collective bargaining agreements, so we've assumed, all our collective bargaining agreements are settled for another year, so we've got those percentages. I just assume everybody moves up a step, and I assume a certain, a proportion of staff move up a column. We have all non-union staff, including administrators, all get their cost of living increase equivalent to the Unit 8 increase, which has been the approach that we've used traditionally for that group of staff. Well, I have included an estimated saving from turnover, so I have assumed that we'll see some retirements and some turnover that will grab us some savings. School, and that won't change unless they're much higher than I expected. School choice and charter school enrollment, we based that on some historic data and provisional data for FY26. I will get finalised data for FY26, and we'll be able to update those numbers if they are substantially different. State aid, and so excess and deficiency. So we have reduced that from $1 million to $800,000. So that reduction is still in there on our excess and deficiency to offset the assessments. That's something we might look at. And then finally, minimum local contribution, because that impacts assessments. We'll get that number with the rest of the state data. All right, so I've gone quickly. Before I sort of go over the next steps, is any questions? Anything anybody wants me to go into in a bit more detail?
Questions? You did an amazing job. That's why we don't have questions.
So we have, the governor's state budget will come out, I think it's the 28th. We have been in touch with Harwich Select Board and offered to, one of the themes from, Mr. Krushka's comments earlier and from our discussions last year was the importance of increasing communication earlier, particularly with the Harwich Select Board. So the superintendent and assistant superintendent and I met with the town leadership there, town administrators and finance staff earlier this week, and we offered the opportunity for us to go and present to their select boards. Chatham were happy to stick with the timeline we already have, going to see their finance committee in February 12th, and Harwich were keen to have us come and talk to the select boards, just give them an overview of where we are right now with our budget, and what's coming. And so they've penciled us in, I think, for January 26th. But that's not been confirmed yet. There's the governor's state budget again. I'm so keen on it, I put it in twice. Then we are looking at school committee. I'm pointing at Jackie because she's on the finance subcommittee. So I know the superintendent has already sent out invites, I think, for next meeting of the finance subcommittee, so we can start to look at what options we have if we are going to try and reduce the budget and the assessments. February 11th, I think, as we get the health insurance rate setting meeting. February 12th, we're presenting to the Chatham Finance Committee. We're also, in February 12th, presenting the public hearing of the budget, so that's a legislative requirement, and we have to do a public hearing of the budget. And we have a potential school committee vote if there's been changes from all the information we've got, if we want to change the budget at that time. And then we're looking ahead, and there will probably be meetings between those two dates, but for the final vote of the budget on March 12th. But one thing we included in the budget was communicating this budget to the select boards. We included a draft letter, for you to send if you would like. So in the past, the regional agreement requires us to send the budget to the towns after this meeting, once it's approved. In the past, I've just emailed it to the town administrators and they've passed on to their boards. But given the size of the increase, we just wondered if it would be helpful to sort of do a more formal process, send them with an accompanying letter, just explain that there are still items out there to be reviewed and that we will provide further updates once that information is available. Just to try and set a tone, to sort of set that this is a collaborative approach. The towns are our partners. We're not just dumping this on their doorstep and walking away, but looking to work with them to come up with a kind of an outcome that we can all live with.
Questions? Wow.
There you go. All right.
I think that might be a first. But we do need to vote on this draft budget, so do I have a motion? Ms. Seabright Long?
Motion to approve that the draft FY27 budget and assessments, Motion to approve the draft FY27 budget as presented in your packet.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right. Moving right along. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
great.
I'll move right along.
You'll move right along.
Move on down the road.
We do not have any subcommittee representative or liaison reports this evening, so we'll move right to the superintendent's report.
I have a few recognitions, and then I'll just, maybe just a little footnote to what Michael was talking about. In terms of the recognitions, January is National School Board Appreciation Month, so I want to take a moment and thank the members of our school committee for the time, care, and thought that they put into the work of supporting our students, staff, schools, and communities. We'd like to thank Monomoy Regional High School parent Sharon Mabel, who has been working to solicit donations to purchase new headsets for the high school theater program. Many thanks to Sharon for spearheading this endeavor, and to the following people who have donated to date: Peter and Kathy Wildman, Charles Clute, Sharon Mabel, Tony Guthrie, Paul Grover, and Dawn Boyton. We want to give special thanks to Andy Odell of the Lower Cape Outreach Council for going above and beyond to help one of our families with their home's heat and hot water, when their home's heat and hot water system failed over the holidays. He worked with the Lower Cape Outreach Board to fully fund the replacement of the system, and the family again has heat and hot water. Our district-wide staff shout-out for December was to Wyatt Sullivan, a grade 7 ELA teacher at our middle school. Wyatt was nominated by a number of his students. Here are some of their submissions. One student said, "He never judged where I came from or who I was. He focused on guiding me to who I wanted to become." Another student wrote, "He made us look at things in a different way and taught us so many things that we will carry throughout life. He's an inspiration to all, and he deserves all the recognition in this world." We encourage our school community to keep sending these great submissions to recognize our fantastic teachers and staff, and you can go to monomoy.edu staff shoutout to nominate someone. Finally, we would like to thank Children's Cove for once again partnering with us to bring Richard Gurry here of the Institute for Responsible Online Cell Phone Communication to have that presentation at Monomoy presented to students in grades 3 through 7, as well as to families during an evening event. The topics discussed included how to be a smart and safe when gaming, using social media, communicating online, and how to be good digital citizens. A link to a video of his presentation will be available soon on our website. And then lastly, I'd like to just circle back to really what Charles mentioned when he was giving his public comment. Michael and I received today from the interim town manager in Harwich, that draft budget presentation. He shared the slides with us, and that 4.7% placeholder that he's carrying for Monomoy is significantly below what Michael just presented. So Dr. Millen and Michael and I will be setting up a number of meetings here in the next week to start talking about sort of a plan B and what can we do to go close the gap between the number that is in that draft Harwich budget and the number that's in our draft budget. I frequently tell people that budgets in January look much worse than they do as we get to March. But it's mythical thinking that we can close the gap between there. That gap, the difference between what Michael presented and a 4.7% increase, if we're supposed to include the borrowing costs for the middle school project that were approved at town meeting, that's roughly a $1.3 million gap for a quick back of the matchbook while I was sitting here during Michael's presentation. Golf. It'd be mythical thinking that we can close that gap and still be able to call that budget a level services budget. But we owe it to our communities to do everything we can to go and find ways to meet somewhere in the middle with our towns and to provide the best services that we possibly can while being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. So we'll have conversations. When you looked at the one slide that Michael had that had the capital projects and the tech, the IT projects that we'd be looking at next year, and say, okay, which of those are essential when it comes to safety? Which of those are going to be really essential to make sure that everything happens next year? And what do we have to potentially push down the road? But we have to be careful. Like, we can't push everything down the road and then 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, you have this huge fiscal cliff. We need to, again, we've got to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar, and that's also thinking about what sort of fiscal cliffs that we're potentially creating. We are going to have those conversations. I know Roberta has reached out to the finance subcommittee where Robin, Michael, and I already have some ideas that we want to bounce off you in terms of some big picture things that we might be able to do in terms of different reorganizations. Again, trying to say, okay, what can we do to potentially meet there, somewhere in the middle without touching that educational core that I know is so important to our families. But it's I think we went into this knowing that this was going to be a challenging budget year, and there are a lot of conversations that we're going to have to be having. So that ultimate budget that the school committee will vote on will likely look very different. But hopefully, the experiences that we see for our students don't look different. And again, I think that's going to take a lot of conversation, both in-house, but also between us and the towns, and particularly the town of Harwich. That's it for me.
All right. Any comments or questions for Dr. Carpenter?
I have one question back to the budget. I don't know if Michael, if I'm able to just ask him a question back to discussion item number 7. And I might not have heard you, but did we also report out on the placeholder for Chatham for the budget for this year? Because I think you've met with them as well already.
Yeah, they were at our meeting, and I can't remember what they were holding. I think it was 7%, but I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, I think Michael's recollection's about right, but again.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry, 7%.
7%.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they've
Okay.
adjusted that since.
What was our total increase last year that we finalized on? Do you remember that number?
Yes, it was.
Sorry.
I've switched off. Hold on.
Sorry, back on.
I think it was, hold on, give me 2 seconds.
We couldn't let you leave tonight thinking you left.
I know.
Everything answered.
No, it's
While Michael's looking this up, I will share that, that Jill's timeline with Chatham is behind, like it happens after Harwich's, so she's not, I don't think that number's fully baked with her, but you can imagine that, whatever number Jill was, potentially carrying sort of became rather moot when, one partner was like, it's likely going to be south of 5.
So yeah, it was 5.8% was our
Last year,
last year's
5.8,
increase,
okay.
yeah. And it was actually around 4, I believe it was like around 4% for Harwich and higher for Chatham. Chatham had a higher increase last year.
Okay.
And that didn't have borrowing costs on it,
Yeah.
which is new this year, and it, represents about a 1% increase just in and of itself to the assessments.
I mean, just if I can have a final comment, that I think districts, it seems this increase in costs we're seeing that across the state, if not across the country, and it's not like there's some huge thing in our budget which won't happen next year. It just feels like this is, at least for the next few years, we're just going to see this challenge of these high increasing costs, and that putting pressure on our budget and our services.
And Michael, I'm sorry, did you say what Chatham's increase was? Did you break them out?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was.
I'm wondering, are
last
they carrying the 7 over, or where's the 7 come, or did they carry over plus a point, or?
So last year, I believe it was around 7.8% for.
So they just carried the 7?
I think so, yeah, maybe less,
Okay.
so yeah, because
Okay.
because the number we gave them was higher than they had been carrying. I don't
Okay.
know how much.
All right, great, thank you very much. Sorry to recall you.
No.
That was exciting.
Yeah, last minute.
All right, we've had the presentation of warrants. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. And we will adjourn at 7:31. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.